It seems that the situation surrounding the disputed South American territory of Essequibo is reaching its boiling point, and that's all thanks to the United States, and as some would say, Washington's never-ending pursuit for other nations' oil and gas.
The
government of the United States of America, considering itself to be the sovereign of our continent, and with the excuse of the illegal Monroe Doctrine, has once again intervened in a territorial dispute that is more than 200 years old over our territory of Essequibo, Guyana. Today, the government of the United States of America wants to appropriate our oil resources using the company ExxonMobil.
What does Washington have to do with the territorial dispute between Guyana and Venezuela? Well, let's take it back a little bit. This is a border dispute between Guyana and Venezuela. Each side claims that this stretch of land belongs to them, and it's quite a significant portion, at just about 160,000 square kilometers. It's almost a third of Guyana. It's also very rich in oil and gas. Venezuela has claimed the territory since it declared independence from Spain in 1811. Guyana, which used to be a British colony, insists that it belongs to them after Britain gained control through a treaty with the Netherlands back in 1814. But the argument here is that the treaty wasn't specific when it comes to the borders. Fast forward a few decades, and Venezuela asked the United States for help under the Monroe Doctrine, which opposed European colonialism in the Western Hemisphere. Some even thought that this could lead to another war between Britain and the U.S. Now, a tribunal in 1899 decided that the majority of the land belonged to the British colony, which of course was a huge disappointment for both Caracas and Washington. But when Guyana became independent in 1966, the border issue resurfaced. That's when it was decided, according to a Geneva agreement, that the territorial dispute would be reconsidered. Meanwhile, relations between Venezuela and Washington have deteriorated. So it's hardly surprising that Washington no longer seems to care about Venezuela's case, especially since Guyana gave drilling license to the U.S. oil major ExxonMobil. And now the U.S. is apparently looking to set up a military base there.
We denounce that the government of the United States of America intends to militarize this situation. The U.S. Southern Command wants to create a military base in the disputed territory in order to create a spearhead in its aggression against Venezuela and consolidate the plundering of our energy resources.
Naturally, Venezuela is worried and fears that the U.S. wants to take control of what Venezuelans see as their own oil resources. Guyana insists that it's their territory and they can do whatever they want with it.
Allowing the court to decide would ensure a resolution that is peaceful, equitable, and in accordance with international law. Guyana will spare no effort in defending its sovereign and territorial integrity.
Guyana reached out to the International Court of Justice. That was a few years ago. And then this spring, they ruled that the court had jurisdiction over the dispute. But there's been no decision yet, and some argue it won't come anytime soon. But even if it does, we know that its rulings are often ignored anyway, and it's the same with Geneva agreements. So what's the way out? Well, if we take into account Washington's support for the opposition during Venezuela's presidential crisis in 2019, it's safe to assume that we're in for a repeat of the same old scenario. That didn't work out for them, but we know instances when the U.S. intervened under the guise of democracy only to leave with an abundance of oil and gas, like in Libya and Syria.
Libya produced some 1.6 million barrels a day and boasted Africa's largest proven crude oil reserve. Thus, if Libya's ruler prioritized other nations over the United States in protest of AFRICOM, this would be a discrete justification for the United States and NATO in supporting regime change.
We came, we saw, he died.
US officials must be held accountable for the looting, and the US government must be obliged to pay compensation, end the illegal presence of US forces, and return the lands it occupies and the oil and gas fields to the Syrian state.
But we are leaving soldiers to secure the oil.
We have the oil is secure.
We're keeping the oil. I like oil.
And now here we go again. Only this time the resources are in Latin America. Considering Washington's shady track record, is it that outrageous that Venezuela is concerned? Not really, according to those who believe it's time to call a spade a spade.